Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working as a developer for postal systems for over a decade now. My expertise lies specifically in address validation and geographic data structures. Last month, my company sent me to Germany to help implement our system for handling United Kingdom addresses in their existing framework. I'm originally from Manchester, born and raised, and I've worked on similar projects across Europe. Usually these implementations go smoothly, but this one, well, let's just say it was an experience I won't forget. When I arrived at the German office, I was greeted by their lead developer, who was assigned to work with me on this project. He seemed friendly enough at first, but that changed quickly once we started working. When I began reviewing their system, I noticed something odd. They had set up England, Scotland, and Wales as separate countries rather than regions of the United Kingdom. Even worse, Northern Ireland was completely missing from their database. I pointed out to him that the setup needed to be adjusted, explaining that these shouldn't be separated like this. He responded by asking what I meant, insisting that their setup was correct. I tried to explain that for postal addresses, these needed to be treated as regions within the United Kingdom. He then told me that I didn't understand, stating that Northern Ireland was not in England. I took a deep breath. This was going to be one of those conversations. I explained to him that I knew Northern Ireland wasn't in England and tried to clarify that Northern Ireland was part of the United Kingdom. I emphasized that it needed to be linked to Great Britain in the system to properly make up the United Kingdom. He responded by saying that's exactly what he was saying, that Northern Ireland wasn't in England, but in Ireland. I corrected him, explaining that wasn't right and that it was Northern Ireland, a separate territory. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms with a smug smile, and told me that he thought I was confused, claiming that Northern Ireland was part of Eire. I told him that was absolutely wrong, explaining that Northern Ireland had been part of the United Kingdom since the 1600s and wasn't ceded to Eire after World War I. His smile grew wider, and he turned to his colleagues, who had gathered around our desks, watching our discussion with interest. With complete confidence, he told me that he thought I would find that he was right, adding that he had been there. At this point, I'd had enough. I reached into my bag and pulled out my passport, placing it on the desk between us. When I told him to read what it said, he asked what I meant. I repeated my request more firmly, emphasizing each word. He picked up the passport and his face slowly changed as he read aloud the words, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland passport. The office went quiet. His colleagues started looking at their screens, suddenly very interested in their work. The lead developer's face had turned red. I didn't think was possible. I asked him if we could now implement the system correctly. He quietly nodded, and for the rest of my time there, he didn't try to explain anything about the United Kingdom to me again. In fact, he barely spoke to me unless absolutely necessary. The system was properly implemented within a week, with all regions correctly linked to the United Kingdom. Before I left, I made sure to leave behind some documentation about the United Kingdom's geographic structure, just in case anyone else needed a refresher. When I go back home, I received an email from their project manager apologizing for the confusion and thanking me for my patience in explaining everything. Apparently, they've now implemented a new policy requiring thorough research of regional structures before setting up address systems for different countries. I count that as a win. What made this experience even more satisfying was what I learned a few months later. A colleague who visited the same office told me that my passport incident had become something of a legendary story there. Apparently, whenever someone tries to argue about something without proper knowledge, others remind them about the passport incident. They even added a framed world map in their meeting room, with the United Kingdom's regions clearly marked. The lead developer, who tried to lecture me about my own country's geography, he's now known for triple-checking his facts before making any claims about geographic data. Even better, my company now uses this story as a case study in our international training sessions about the importance of local knowledge and the dangers of making assumptions. It's funny how pulling out a passport that day didn't just correct a database error, it sparked a small cultural change in how an entire office approaches their work. I moved to this small town in southern Portugal 3 years ago. I work remotely, and after the pandemic hit, I decided city life wasn't for me anymore. I found this perfect little house with a spacious driveway and a beautiful garden. The neighborhood was quiet, and everyone seemed friendly. Well, almost everyone. I spend most of my days coding and occasionally hosting game nights with my online friends. We've been gaming together for years, and even though we're spread across different countries, we've maintained our friendship through regular gaming sessions. It's been a peaceful life until that one fateful day when everything changed. I was in the middle of a gaming session with my friends when I heard an aggressive knock on my door. Opening it, I found a woman I'd never seen before. When I asked if I could help her, she immediately started yelling about my car being illegally parked and blocking the sidewalk. I looked over to the street where 3 cars were parked, all completely legally, and none of them were mine. I explained to her that my car was actually at the mechanic's shop for its annual maintenance. This only made her angrier, and she accused me of lying to her face. Her screaming was so loud that my friends could hear it through my microphone. Not wanting to deal with this nonsense, I simply closed the door and returned to my game. She continued pounding on my door, but I ignored her. Eventually, she left. A few days later, I was hosting a family dinner at my house. My driveway, which can fit 4 cars, was full, so I had to park my car on the street. I was waiting for my grandparents to arrive. They were stuck in traffic when I heard another knock. Opening the door, I came face to face with the same woman from before. She immediately started ranting about my car being illegally parked again. She had apparently been watching me earlier when I moved my car to help my cousin, whose car was having key problems and couldn't be locked properly. I tried to reason with her, pointing out that my car was clearly parked in a designated parking spot. Instead of listening to logic, she became even more enraged at my response. Suddenly, she started screaming for help, as if she was in danger. My close family friend came rushing out of the house to see what was happening. Before I could even explain the situation, the woman cut me off with an outrageous accusation, claiming that I had hit her with my car. This was completely absurd since I hadn't even left my house. Just then my grandparents pulled up in their car. My friend quickly defended me, stating the obvious fact that I hadn't left the house at all. The woman threatened us with legal action, saying we'd be hearing from her lawyer. When she turned to leave, she deliberately bumped into my grandfather, causing him to fall. Thankfully, he landed on the grass and bushes in my front yard. My friend and I rushed to help him up while she quickly took photos of my license plate before speeding away. Later, I discovered she had actually filed a police report for a hit and run. She was attempting to sue me, but fortunately, Portuguese law doesn't work that way. You can't just sue someone without proper cause and evidence. I had installed security cameras around my house when I first moved in as a general safety measure. The footage clearly showed that I never left the house during her first visit, and during the second incident, it captured her deliberately pushing my grandfather and her fraudulent claims. I decided to be proactive and took the footage to the police myself. They were very interested in her false police report and her assault on my grandfather. The police are now investigating her for filing a false report and assault of an elderly person. I haven't seen her in the neighborhood lately, but I heard from my neighbors that she's been served with court papers. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of lymphoma. The doctors gave me 2 options: aggressive treatment with a slim chance of remission or palliative care. I chose to fight. Not because I was afraid of dying, but because I wasn't done living yet. My life revolves around radio-controlled airplanes now. It started as a distraction from the constant hospital visits, but it became my therapy. There's something peaceful about watching these little machines soar through the air, following your commands, making you feel in control when everything else in your life isn't. The chemo is rough. Every other week I'm hooked up to a pump for 3 days straight, The pump runs on AA batteries, 8 of them per cycle. After my 29th cycle, I had accumulated quite a collection of these batteries. Some were used, some were new, but all of them still had life in them. Since my planes and equipment use rechargeable batteries, I decided to bring them to the flying field to share with other club members. The club president approached me and asked if I was sure about giving the batteries away. I told him I was, explaining that it was better than letting them go to waste. I left the bag near the club tent, and throughout the day people would come by, take what they needed, and some even thanked me. By the end of the day, the bag was empty. I felt good about it. At least something positive came from my treatment. The next day, this guy shows up while I'm adjusting one of my planes. He asked if I was the one who brought the AA batteries yesterday. When I confirmed it was me, he immediately asked when I could get more. Confused, I asked him what he meant. He explained that he had taken most of the batteries yesterday for his work radios, saying he was always buying batteries and these were perfect. He wanted to know when the next batch was coming. This entitled jerk had taken almost 200 batteries. Batteries that were meant to be shared among all club members. I explained to him that these batteries came from my chemotherapy pump and that I wasn't his personal battery supplier. He responded by insisting that he needed them for work, arguing that I was just going to throw them away anyway. Then he demanded that I better get him more. Something snapped inside me. When you're living on borrowed time, you stop caring about being polite. I told him in no uncertain terms that I was dying of cancer and these batteries kept my chemo pump running. I warned him that if he ever threatened me again, he would regret it, and told him to get lost. He got angry and threatened to report me to the club president. I simply told him to go ahead. He stormed off to find the club president. I later learned about their conversation, where the president had told him that I'd been a member for 19 years and was terminally ill. The president warned him to back off, or he'd be the one leaving the club. The guy wasn't done though. He started calling other club members, trying to get them to support having me kicked out. He even made up stories about how I was hoarding medical supplies and creating a hostile environment. The club president called me 2 days later to tell me they had removed him from the club permanently because he was harassing other members about me. When I expressed that all this was over some batteries, the president told me they had also reported him to the local radio-controlled aircraft association to prevent him from joining any other clubs in the area. It turned out this wasn't his first offense. He'd been kicked out of 2 other hobby clubs for the same entitled behavior. Now he's blacklisted from all radio-controlled clubs in our region, all because he couldn't handle someone saying no to his demands for free batteries. I still bring batteries to share when I have them. The difference is, now people at the club make sure they're distributed fairly. I'm a single mom of 2 boys, and times have been pretty tough lately. My youngest just turned 16 and wanted to start contributing to our household, even though I told him to focus on school. He's always been like that, mature beyond his years. Last month, when the local movie theater started hiring, he immediately applied. I was so proud when they called him for an interview. It was supposed to be just me and him going, kind of like a special moment between us. I even saved up a few dollars to maybe get us some celebratory ice cream afterward. But you know how family can be. My mom, who lives with us since Dad passed, insisted on coming along because she needed groceries. Then my older son, 19, decided to join because he needed a haircut, and refuses to let Grandma near his head anymore. After that one time, she practically gave him a military cut because she couldn't see properly. So there we were, crammed in my old sedan with me having only $6 in my wallet instead of treating my youngest to something special. We left early for the interview, running a few quick errands first. The plan was simple: drop my youngest at the theater, take Mom and my older son to the grocery store nearby, then come back to wait in the parking lot. After dropping off my youngest, who was nervous but trying not to show it, I headed toward the grocery store. That's when everything went sideways. I was in the turning lane, light was green when I heard ambulance sirens. Being a responsible driver, I completely stopped. It's the law after all. That's when I heard it. Honk honk. The driver behind me was losing it. I could hear him screaming and cursing at me to move my car, his voice barely audible over the ambulance sirens. The emergency vehicle passed through, sirens blaring, probably rushing someone to the hospital. Only then did I complete my turn. This apparently enraged the driver so much that he followed us to the grocery store. As soon as I stopped to let Mom and my older son out, he jumped out of his car and charged toward us. He started screaming at me, asking who taught me how to drive, while throwing in plenty of curse words. My older son was about to step out and confront him, but I held him back. The driver was blocking other cars at this point, causing a scene in the parking lot. I tried to explain about the ambulance, but he cut me off, yelling that he didn't care about any ambulance and that I couldn't just stop in the middle of the road. That's when I noticed a police car pulling up. Turns out an officer had been talking to security nearby and saw the whole thing. He walked over and asked if there was a problem. The angry driver immediately started complaining about me stopping in the middle of the road for no reason. When I explained about the ambulance, the officer confirmed that yielding to emergency vehicles was a law. The driver started to argue with the officer, but before he could finish his sentence, he tried to push past him to get to me. Big mistake. The officer had him on the ground and cuffed before he could take another step. The officer told him that adding assault on a police officer to his road rage incident wasn't a smart move. As the officer radioed for backup, he waved us on. Through my rearview mirror, I could see the driver being helped up, still shouting but now with shiny new bracelets accessorizing his outfit. What happened next made the whole incident even more satisfying. While waiting for my youngest to finish his interview, I saw 2 more police cars pull up to the scene. Later, one of the store employees told me that the angry driver had apparently been involved in 3 other road rage incidents that month alone. His little tantrum over an ambulance had finally caught up with him. My youngest got the job and my older son treated us all to ice cream with his own money. When we sat there enjoying our treats, a police officer, the same one who had handled the situation, stopped by our table. He told us that the angry driver was going to face multiple charges, including assault on an officer and reckless driving. He even mentioned that the ambulance we had stopped for had been rushing a heart attack patient to the hospital, and they had made it just in time. My youngest started his new job the following week. My mom still brings it up at family dinners, especially the part about the driver's face when he realized he was going to jail. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.